The safety is off. There's a round in the chamber. This is Armed Alabama. Sponsored by McCoy Outdoor Company, Mobile's hometown full-line outdoor sporting products and gear store. An interactive talk show discussing self-defense, product reviews, shooting tips, safety, and more. Your calls, comments, and texts welcome at 343-0106. Now, here are your hosts, retired judge and certified NRA instructor, Rusty Johnston.
Out here in the country, where the city lights don't shine, I live my life the simple way, and you know I'm doing just fine. I fish, I hunt, and I shoot my guns, and I raise a little hell. The things I do, you know I do them well. This is my America, and I'm so proud, and I don't mind, I say it loud. This is my America, God bless America, land of the free, because of the brave. This is my America.
Thank you, Buck Allen, singer-songwriter, for writing that and singing that music. This is Judge Rusty Johnston with the Armed Alabama Show. I'm a retired Alabama Circuit Judge and NRA firearms instructor. Normally, I have my co-host, Adam Strange, with me, but we have given him the night off. Probably have something to do with politics. We got a great show for you tonight and some opportunity to win some great prizes, too. If you're on Facebook right now, or can get to Facebook, you might want to go there and watch us on Facebook Live. It is Armed Alabama Radio, FM Talk 106.5. You'll see us or see me there, and you might want to pay attention to the new, I guess, is background photo I put up, because we're going to talk a little bit about your rights, the Constitution, of course, gun rights. And if we get election results, we'll do that. I want to thank my friend, speaking of laws, my friend Steve Moore, who's a personal injury lawyer here. And lots of times when people get hurt, there's somebody to blame. It's called negligence. He was a classmate of mine at Alabama Law School, and he tries cases for all the courts. He's local. He's here at 8 North Dearborn Street. That's on Dauphin between that is on Dearborn between Dauphin and St. Francis Street. Or you can call him at, better yet, look him up on the web, www.moorelawfirm-al.com, or you can just Google Moore Law Firm. And of course, no representation is ever made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services performed by other lawyers. As I said, you can go on Facebook Live right now and look at us. You can also, if you're getting close to being out of the area, you can either go to the FM Talk website, FM Talk 106.5, or you can go to the Armed Alabama website and you can pick up a simultaneous broadcast of the audio of the show. And of course, our call in and text numbers here at FM Talk 106.5 in Mobile, it's 251-343-0106. And by text, I mean, if you have a quick question, don't want to talk on there, you can text your question to that number, and somehow it comes up on the screen here. So, and let's all remember, the Constitution of the United States is the law that governs those who govern us. It doesn't govern us. It doesn't apply. We don't have anything to do with it. But it mostly binds the national government. That's what it was supposed to do. Now it binds local governments. But we were fine before they established that.
It binds our rulers.
It binds them because they have sworn. Yeah. Well, I said govern.
Yeah, I love it when somebody calls them our rulers.
Probably better in a lot of ways. Pew surveys, or what the Pew Institute, whatever they call it, Pew Foundation, they did a survey recently about so-called democracy, which we were talking about. Of course, we're a republic, and how much an individual or even an interest group is very interested in a subject can get a law passed or stop something being passed there's almost, according to zero chance. There's no chance an individual, I guess, unless you're, a billionaire, has a chance of affecting any legislation, getting it passed. And there's very little chance that a special interest group can. You have a lot better chance of getting something stopped than ever getting something passed. So that probably means we're more in line with the founders' original thinking, although they wanted to elect good, honest men of good character to all these positions. And I'm not so sure we really have that. But one of the things we're going to talk about tonight, and I mentioned the Facebook page, we'll get to it. And that, once again, Armed Alabama Radio, FM Talk 106.5. On our background photo, I have test for the next nominee to the United States Supreme Court. The following person should always be excluded: any lawyer who graduated from Harvard or Yale law schools. No way. Because this is full of that now.
Those are supposed to be presidents.
Yeah. Any lawyer who is either a resident or native of Massachusetts or California.
Okay.
Scratch them off the list. Any admirer of Justices John Marshall, Joseph Story, Hugo Black, or Earl Warren. I can talk about those more particular. Anyone who's ever been employed as a law professor. No way. Obama was, but he wasn't. Then again, he wasn't on the Supreme Court. Joseph Story was, and he did his law professing on the side. Any lawyer who has never been employed in the private law practice. You worked for the government all your life. You don't have the range of experience that we need of people on the Supreme Court. Any lawyer who has attended the play Hamilton. And I'll briefly, the reason we are...
Whether they got the tickets for free or not.
Yeah. The reason we're in debt $10 trillion, and the federal government is not limited to the enumerated powers named in the Constitution, is because of Alexander Hamilton. Any lawyer who wears a bow tie, except when going to a formal social occasion. I have found any lawyer with a bow tie is normally a left-winger or a progressive. The last one in the Supreme Court that always did was John Paul Stevens, and he's the retired justice who somehow thinks we can either amend or repeal the Second Amendment. We don't get, as you know, Charlie, we don't get our right to keep and bear arms. It's not a gift from the government. All the Second Amendment does is recognize that there is a pre-existing right, and says, of course, originally the federal government could not infringe upon that. That's been applied to the states, and we'll talk about the 14th Amendment and how it was passed. I don't think it was legally passed, but we've got to go by it. But Stevens thinks we can amend it out of existence or repeat. You couldn't do that with freedom of speech, because anytime it says, and even the courts agree with me, the right of the people, that means it's a pre-existing individual right that all of us have. And it existed before the formation of the Constitution, and it's going to exist after the Constitution is over. And, it's very questionable how the Constitution ever got into being. The group was authorized to hold a convention to recommend amendments to the Articles of Incorporation, Articles of Confederation, which, of course, had to be approved unanimously by all 13 states. They immediately went into session, had a secret 3-month session. You couldn't tell anybody what was going on. And they had a whole new constitution, which only had to be ratified by 9 out of 13 states and never repealed the Articles of Confederation. Now, the Congress could have stopped it. They just sent it to all the states with no message. Hey, we think this is good, think this is bad. And eventually was narrowly ratified in just about every state. But then again, Patrick Henry said, I smell a rat when he was offered to be a delegate in Philadelphia. He said, I smell a rat. And that's obviously what happened. But getting him past that, I mentioned John Marshall. We had a horrible act called the Alien and Sedition Act in the 1790s that said you couldn't speak against the government, say anything bad about the president, Congress, etc.
Well, that's gone.
Clearly unconstitutional. Marshall issued a report. He was in the Virginia legislature, that all that was the proper role of government. It is his wording. I mean, everybody knows it was him. Then he gets on the Supreme Court and has a completely different opinion. Folks, remember our number, 251-343-0106. We're going to be coming back after a short break, and we'll take calls and maybe some more of these issues, and I've got some prizes to give away.
Failure to communicate. Some men you just can't reach. So you get what we had here last week, which is the way he wants it. Well, he gets it. And I don't like it any more than you, man.
Cool Hand Luke. Back with Armed Alabama, Judge Rusty Johnston. If any of you, we're going to give our first giveaway.
And I'm really admiring that shirt.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be on that. The giveaway is The Politically Incorrect Guide to the United States Constitution by Kevin Goodsman. And the first question is, if you're around Facebook, go to it. I'm going to need to stand so you can see better. And what is written on my T-shirt?
But you got to call in the answer.
Yeah, you got to call in the answer, and we'll take your call.
And what's the prize
we won't
again?
put you on the air if you don't want to put them there. They get The Politically Incorrect Guide to the United States Constitution by Dr. Kevin Goodsman, who is both a lawyer and a PhD in history. He never practiced law, which means that he wasn't warped by some of the stuff he would have heard in the general practice out there. I was talking about the Articles of Confederation, and that's how, there's several books called The Framers' Coup, like coup d'etat, and the Counter-Revolution of 1787, because a lot of the moneyed people felt like the state legislators were giving too much relief to debtors. I mean, compared to what Franklin Roosevelt did, it's nothing. And there was a lot of money speculating going on. Now, the reason that everybody is taught why the Articles of Confederation were done away with is, because the states couldn't trade among themselves. This caused a terrible recession. And that among other things. There is and the states never paid their fair share. It's a whole book showing they paid more than you would expect someone in a like situation. These game theorists do that. But the reason we were in an economic depression is we were basically still in a state of war with Great Britain, even though we had a treaty of peace until after the War of 1812. They had forts in Canada. They were screwing with our shipping. That's why, and there's a good book on that. I'll think of the name in a minute, fairly recent, that goes through all of those problems. And that's why the economy didn't turn around until 1816, 1815 or so, and then it really turned around in the era of good feelings with James Monroe, the second and only president elected unanimously besides Washington. And I'm going to say that because one elector voted for someone who was not even interested in running, only for the reason is he thought Washington ought to be the only person elected unanimously. So he was elected unanimously. Very few people know about James Monroe. He was if you remember the famous picture of Washington crossing the Delaware going to attack Trenton, the guy, I think it's the guy holding the flag, is supposed to be Monroe. Now, he was actually over there earlier getting everything ready for the attack and was wounded badly. But he was a real hero. And War of 1812, he was Secretary of State, I think. The Secretary of War resigned when Washington was being attacked. So he was appointed Secretary of War and personally went down there and fought the British in Maryland. And, of course, they took Washington eventually. But we might have had a winner. Phil, did we have a winner? Was that just a fan calling?
We don't.
We'll get to it in a minute. Remember, this is the Armed Alabama show. No winner yet. If you know, what the name is.
Now, you do have to get on Facebook to see.
Yeah, you got to get on
t-shirt.
Facebook. Well, this is just going to be a little bonus we have a little cadre of people that listen on Facebook.
And the color is almost crimson and white.
Yeah, you're right. You're
It's
exactly
sort of purple
right.
and white or violet and white.
So if you know who's on there, let us know, and we will talk about it. I want to thank also McCoy Outdoors. Boy, it's getting to be Christmas time, and it ain't Christmas unless there's a gun under the tree.
That's right.
And you can get guns, you can get bullets, you can get anything remotely related to sports.
And expert people to wait on you. That
Charlie, that is so important. I went with a friend 10 years ago to a gun store chain, and he wanted the same gun as my FNP here. But the one that the guy showed him, which was good price, had night sights. They're the luminescent tritium light sights. Those are usually about $50, $75 more. So I asked the guy, gosh, is this the price for these with night sights? Just no response.
Yeah.
Asked him 3 times. And I finally said, you don't know what I'm talking about, do you? And he finally admitted it.
Yeah.
Nobody knows everything, but just say, I don't know.
I tell you, Judge, one other thing that really sold me on McCoy's too, and I told you this before when I bought that Beretta that because of a little bit weak hands, was having trouble cocking it. And so I went and I had bought it from them.
Yeah.
And I went back and explained the situation, said I want to get a revolver. Well, they did such a sweet deal taking that gun back in trade. I mean, it had only been fired maybe 100 times.
Try doing that at big box store.
Oh, yeah. But I think I got the revolver for like $60.
Yeah. That is one. And there are a lot of times, especially husbands will buy buy a gun for the handgun for the wife, and it just doesn't fit.
And what's the biggest mistake they usually make? I think if they buy
they always buy the ultra light revolver, which, just Newton's law, the lighter the gun is you're going to have more recoil on it.
That's right. She fires it one time and throws it down and hits you because you bought such a lousy gun.
You have, and there's so many guns that you really just need to put your hands on them. So try to urge men not to do that. I did it myself years ago, but to take their wives in and give them a gift certificate and have them just put their hands on the gun.
And at McCoy's, they'll hand you the pistol, let you handle it and see if you like it or not.
And one thing you can get down there is self-defense ammunition, which, we usually tell people don't use full metal jacket. Well, the armed forces use full metal jacket and have. The real reason is not because it tears a bigger hole in them. That's what the advertising would say, or has more knockdown power, which is no such thing. The real reason is, and Charlie, you know this, I'm holding up, for those of you not on Facebook, which is most of you, 9mm round.
And by the way, Judge, don't leave that here when you come tonight.
He doesn't understand these aren't
No, it wasn't that. We had so much fun with that bullet for the next week.
Well, what it is, it's a lot of self-defense rounds are just opened at the end. The ones I used to use, HydroShock are. But HydroShock would get jammed in my M9 because of that opening.
What is that in the tip? Is that some kind of plastic?
It's almost like a polymer plastic, a little harder than Play-Doh, but not quite as hard as some plastics. Reason for that is so it won't get caught on the feed ramp, but also so it won't get plugged. We don't live in an area where people have to wear a lot in the winter, but up north, somebody might have a leather jacket on, a sweater, a sweatshirt, polo, all that. And it'll get clogged up with all that stuff. And effectively, it becomes a full metal jacket. And the reason you don't want a full metal jacket is because you don't want over penetration. If you have to shoot somebody, you don't want to also shoot the 2 people behind them. With these type of rounds, supposedly, because I've seen it fired into the Jello type substance, but they should still open up. And I'm sure maybe it does wound somebody a little more. But the real reason is safety.
3 people.
Yeah, the real reason. And a 9mm, some people are surprised, full metal jacket will easier go through your walls of your house and go next door than a 223 or 5.56 round out of a rifle, because those are made, or whether they're made or not, they actually tumble when they first hit something. So the first wall they hit, they're going to tumble. Then I can go through 3 walls.
I wanted to add to my bullet story because I have a question for you. That bullet stayed in this control room for a week until you came back. And every guest that we had picked that bullet up very gingerly, looked at it, put it down very carefully. And the question is, if they had dropped it on the floor, it wouldn't have gone off.
No. Unless you had let's say a small nail pointing straight up, and you could hit it right on the firing pin, which is incredibly unlikely.
So it's relatively safe to handle.
And if it went
bullets.
off, then it wouldn't kill you, because it has to be in the chamber of a firearm to build up the tens of thousands of pounds of pressure to shoot it out.
But you'd have thought they were handling a miniature grenade or something.
Well, it's this thing that everybody's afraid of guns now. Justice Scalia talked about that. Everybody treats guns like they're rattlesnakes. We'll be back after the break, folks, with more great talk on FM Talk 106.5.
Being this is a 44 Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world, and would blow your head clean off. You've got to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
Another myth there. A 44 Magnum will not blow your head clean off.
Yeah, but the guy he was facing might not have known that.
I know. But it brings up kind of the mistakes and myths that are perpetuated by television movies.
Yeah.
I watched a fairly new show. Some of y'all, I don't seem to know about them until they're over, called Colony. And it's kind of futuristic, where aliens and all is taken up. Well, this man is supposed to be a former FBI agent, highly trained. Everywhere he's going, he's got his finger on the trigger.
Uh-huh.
And I'm saying, and then every time he needs his semi-automatic, he racks the slide. And I thought, well, that means he doesn't have it loaded. And he's every time. I'm thinking that's just too obvious.
Where was the technical advisor for that movie?
Yeah, I mean, it would not take Jerry Mischleck or somebody like that. I mean, just pick that up in a book, because one of the reasons we don't put our finger on the trigger until we're ready to fire, we index it. It takes about 1/10 of a second to get it there.
Yeah.
And if you startled me, I'd probably fire.
Or
like
if
that.
you tripped.
Now, it's a double. It's probably 12 pounds, something to pull it the first time. But one reason I have this out, we've checked it 10 times.
Yeah, Barbara got up, but there's no bullets in it, Barbara.
This is a FN, Fabrique Nationale. What is that? You know, FN America, they're a American company, but their sister company is based in Belgium. They made all the Browning shotguns.
Wow.
They sell more small arms to the U.S. military than any other company. And very few people
must be a reason.
Yeah. Well, one, they have like the patents on several of the Browning machine guns. But what I want to show those of you that watch this later, or you're on Facebook now, is Charlie mentioned not being able to rack the slide. And the reason is most people slingshot it back, or even left. I'm right-handed. Well, left-handed and strong. Don't do it that way. What you do is you hold it with your weak hand, hold the slide over the top. Don't get your hands pinched, and push down with your strong hand. See, I'm pushing with my right hand, which has a lot more strength.
And that was my other fear, getting pinched.
Yeah, well, I can understand that. You just got to kind of play around with it.
So I just went to a double action revolver.
But it helps a lot more when you get used to it that way.
And you can get off more rounds in the same period of time than with a revolver.
I've timed that before, and it's like in 5 seconds, just the average person can get off, probably 8 or 10 rounds with the semi-auto, and you'd be lucky to have 5 with a revolver. Now, most of the time, it makes no difference. The quote average gunfight is, 3 seconds or whatever it is, but it's that first shot or two that usually makes the difference. And criminals generally don't go to shooting school, but John Lott, Dr. John Lott, who is the firearms accounting guy and statistics guy, he worked for the Senate Judiciary Committee one time, went around to people in prison that had killed actually law enforcement officers with firearms. Every one of them said, I just pull out my gun and start shooting. They're not taking a stand. They're not aiming. They're just pointing, which, most shootouts are less than 10 feet. So, you do that, but you gotta get it out quick. And that's why I don't, push carrying it in a purse or, deep in your pocket or someplace. If you can't get it out, I'll be real liberal. 3 seconds. You're probably, in most gunfights, going to be the loser.
Yeah.
Somebody, I think I mentioned to y'all a few weeks ago, somebody can run 21 feet with a knife and kill you in less than 2 seconds. And I think maybe it's 2.5. Tueller drill, Tueller. Y'all look that up. But I think it was a lieutenant. But Tueller was a firearms instructor. He wanted to kind of figure out the zone of danger. 1.5 seconds, it must be 2. And 1.5 is the bare amount of time it takes you to understand a threat and draw, and be ready to fire, which, that's ideal. Well, somebody's almost on you in that period of time. So he figured if you let somebody within 21 feet, you better watch it, especially if they're running towards you. A lot of people come, why did the police, that guy was so far away? Especially if he has a weapon, he'll be on you before you can pull your gun out.
Let me ask you something on that. When a law enforcement officer shoots somebody and everybody is shocked when maybe that person picked up 8 shots.
Yeah.
And when 1 or 2 would have probably done the trick.
Well, you said the keyword probably.
Yeah,
because
but you don't know.
There's no science to that. And the general rule of thumb used to be, 2 shots, check it out. The rule of thumb now is you keep firing and assess with each shot, because there are a lot of people, whether it be metabolism, their body build, or under the influence of drugs or something, that 2, 3, 4 shots ain't going to do it. You may have to take a headshot. So that's why I've always told people, you have a gunfight, you may be harmed. The other person may not have a gun, but they may leap on you. I have a great film. It's up months ago. I think it may be on Armed Alabama YouTube, but Clayton, Georgia, police officers chasing, I can't remember, a stolen car or whatever. The car wrecks and is on fire. So the guy says, get your hands up, get out of the car. The guy leaps out of the back window with a dagger, and he is a foot or 2 away from that police officer for it. And he finally fires 3 or 4 shots, but the police officer hits the car backing up. This guy's not stopping. And I don't know that was ever explained, why somebody would just leap out with a dagger like that.
Well, and the thing of it is, whatever prompted the shooting, it shouldn't matter if it was 1 fatal shot or 15.
And it doesn't. It really does. If you have, once deadly force is authorized, deadly force is authorized.
And does adrenaline play a role in that?
Oh, yeah,
too?
everything.
So.
Adrenaline screws up your perception of time.
Well, and if you start shooting, it's kind of hard to stop.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Got a caller.
Okay. And that is Jerry. How are you, Jerry?
Terry, yeah.
Oh, Terry, yeah, I see. Yeah. Sorry. What's up? You got an answer, or you want to talk?
I half a question earlier, and I thought you were asking what you were adorning, and that would have been the sweatshirt of Thomas Jefferson.
You got it. You got it. Great.
I bet you, just like me, you've never seen one of those shirts before.
I haven't. To be honest, but I'd like to have one.
You can get one on Amazon.
People need to be aware of the Founding Fathers and the Constitution and what this nation is all about, because they keep trying to steer us further and further away from it.
Oh, I know. One federal judge said one time recently, 2 or 3 years ago, he was an appeals court judge. I don't know why people spend all the time reading the Constitution and the debates and all. None of that makes any difference. Now, it's probably true.
They try to spend too much time interpreting it.
There you go.
Into something that it's not.
There you go.
Well,
I'm going to put the link up for the shirt, but I'll give you you need the Founder's Guide to the Constitution by Kevin Gutzman's great book. And if you could, give Phil your mailing address, because they're en route to me. It won't be here to Friday, so we need to mail it to you if that's all right.
So we're going to put you back on hold until
stay on hold. Let Phil pick up the phone.
All right.
Appreciate it, Terry.
Okay.
Now, I'll throw another one out for everybody. We talked about this earlier, Charlie.
What are you going to give away this time?
Same book. I got 4 of these books.
Okay.
The Constitution of the United States authorizes the Supreme Court to declare acts of Congress and acts of the state legislatures unconstitutional. Obviously, if they don't comply, if there's a conflict with the Constitution, it's the meaning of it. So the Constitution of the United States, because each state has a constitution, that's what I'd say, that authorizes the Supreme Court of the United States to declare acts of Congress and acts of the state legislatures unconstitutional. I'll just say if they are in conflict with the Constitution. So if anybody knows that, call us here at 251-343-0106, and you will get the politically incorrect. That's a whole series of books, politically incorrect guides to, probably 20 of them. But this one is to the Constitution. And the man that wrote it, who I vaguely know, has a JD degree. Of course, that's law, and then a PhD in American history. He's written a number of books, one on Thomas Jefferson.
Do you think this is going to come up in the state versus federal interpretation of whether marijuana should be legal?
Well, it should.
On the federal law, it is illegal in all 50 states.
And Congress, Supreme Court has stretched the Commerce Clause in a case, I'm going to get the name wrong, it's a Spanish name, Mexican name, out of, I think, Washington, Oregon, about 15, 20 years ago, to say that someone growing a single marijuana plant in their backyard for health reasons, that act is still constitutional because it affects interstate commerce. Now, the general rule used to be there had to be some kind of substantial effect. You had to not just purchase, a pencil. You had to actually, be purchasing tens of thousands. Because what they basically said, almost, they pulled back from that a little bit. But
so which law is going to prevail?
Well, they will say, because they have their Supreme Court, they will say, and they have most people blackmail, brainwashed, that the federal law applies. They will say they'll cite a case called McCulloch versus Maryland, which is probably not the right citation. It's probably an awful case called Aaron versus Cooper, where the Supreme Court claimed I better not answer that question because it may impact on our question we have out, which is, does the Supreme Court, does the Constitution of the United States authorize the Supreme Court to declare acts of Congress and acts of the various state legislatures unconstitutional? And if you know that, you can get the politically incorrect guide to the Constitution by Kevin Gutzman.
And you got to call in to get it.
Oh, yeah. Yes, absolutely. At least talk to Phil. He knows the answer. To show you how far astray, we'll talk about it after the break. I do want to thank 2 people, Hanson Heating and Air. Get your heater ready or your furnace ready for the fall. And Hunter Security, they can put doorbell camera in or the whole shebang, whatever you need. And then if you're doing it yourself, which if you're talented, you can put in cameras. You might need to see Dr. Justin Foster after it's over because you may have a backache from doing all that. And then if you need any of the nails and stuff to do it, go to see one of the Ace Hardware stores, Spring Hill, Moffett Road, or Priola. We'll be right back. Judge Parker was the U.S. District Judge for the district, I guess it was called the Arkansas Territory at that time. Want to thank Steve Moore once again. If you need personal injury lawyer, go call the Moore Law Firm, www.moorelawfirm-al.com. Personal injury is getting hurt, and you think somebody might be a negligent because Now, let's take Thomas because he thinks I probably put out a trick question. Maybe I did.
He wants to argue.
Hey, Tom.
Good evening. Happy Election Day.
Hey, same to you, I guess.
It finally got here.
Do you think this is the most important election in the United States?
No.
I don't either. I just off the top of my head, I would say 1800 because we peaceably changed from the Federalists to the Jeffersonians, and then 1860.
Yeah, that was Gilbert Humphrey, right?
Well, I'd say 1860 was probably the next. My father told us if Humphrey won, we were moving out of the country.
Sound like Barbara Streisand.
Yes.
I want to go
Eric
help her
and,
pack.
Eric, that guy. After got in a fist fight.
And, Humphrey now might be too conservative for most Democrats. So,
I think he's dust, isn't he?
Yeah. What you got? What you want to argue about? Maybe you're...
Oh, you were saying, does the Supreme Court decision supersede state law? I would say, yeah.
Well, I think I put out, but I'll talk to you about a couple of things if I can get my computer going here. Hold on just a second. What?
Gotta love those laptops, Judge.
Yeah, I've never had this happen before. Well, let me go through it a little bit. I actually said the Supreme Court has is authorized by the Constitution to declare acts of Congress and of the states unconstitutional. They're not authorized in the U.S. Constitution. They authorize themselves to do that in Marbury versus Madison. Constitution doesn't say a word about it. And let me tell you,
I understand that.
Yeah.
I remember the Thomas Jefferson. He was pushed into writing the Constitution, wasn't he?
Well, no, he was actually in France at the time.
And he didn't want to do it.
He was in France at the time enjoying the French Revolution. But I tell you,
he wanted some of Marie Antoinette's cake.
Because you have such a good thought process on this, I'm going to send you one of these books. I'm going to give you to Phil in just a second. If you give him your mailing address so we can mail it to you. But I'm going to tell you.
Wow.
I'm going to tell you.
Thank you so much.
Well, you had a good rationale for it. I'll tell you one more thing. The Supreme Court since 1958 claims that it is the ultimate arbiter, decider. It's the ultimate decision maker as to what the Constitution says. There's no basis for that anywhere.
Wow. Say, could I go get my wife and you tell her
Yeah.
I made common sense and I was
Well, you can get the recording of this, but let me give you back to Philip. And if you give him your mailing address, those books are on the way to me. I'll have them Friday, so you'll have yours sometime next week.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Hold on, Thomas.
Well, he had a good reason. And it's like you used to grade papers sometimes, and I purposely kept it real narrow. I didn't say the law because people who've been to law school are always going to say true. They're going to say Marbury versus Madison, maybe Cooper versus Aarons. Yeah, those are Supreme Court cases. And under our system, people obey them like they are the Constitution. But nothing says that decisions or judgments of the Supreme Court are on the same par with the Constitution, because the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, not the Supreme Court's interpretation. Everybody swears an oath. I was telling you earlier, an individual police officer swears an oath to uphold or support, depending on the word, the Constitution. Well, every time he pulls somebody over, he's got to make that decision. Is this constitutional? He can't call an 800 number and have Justice Kavanaugh answer and say, yes, it is constitutional to pull over that car. It just doesn't work that way. So everybody has that decision. Everybody at all levels has that, make that decision, whether that is constitutional, lawful, etc. There's no master person that can do that for you. So anyway, that's just a little trivia. And it ought to get people studying it. I mentioned to you that given the choice, if I could write my own new Constitution, put anything in it I wanted, or interpret the new Constitution, I'll choose interpreting it, because you can always, make a sow's purse into the what is it, the pearls, whatever. You can always make chicken, in the chicken salad. And that's why I mentioned John Marshall, who is almost a saint in the legal community, is one of the worst Supreme Court justices there was, because first of all, he should have not even sat on Marbury versus Madison, because he was the official that came into office right after, he was the official in office under Adams that didn't deliver the commissions on time. And the lawsuit was a suit over, I want my judicial commission. He was a witness. And so, that's just the start of Marshall. If you read, anybody interested, they're online too, Charlie, whole group of books. You can go to libertyfund.com and look at, you can probably download these I know you can download them online. They are the debates in the various state ratifications.
What's the name of that one?
This one here, and they're usually always a guy named Elliott is the one that put them together. Now, these are the state ratification, not the Philadelphia. Philadelphia is a guy named, starts with an F. I'll think of it in a second. Another great series of books you can also look at online, and I'm not sure you can download them. Founders Constitution. It's about 6 volumes. Every clause in the Constitution is gone through, and it relates to what people said in the debates, what English jurists said, where it came from. But that's something that the judge up in Chicago, whose name I don't want to use, said that's just a waste of time.
Obviously, not being a lawyer, are those mandatory reading in law school?
No, you won't get anywhere near that. You know, constitutional history, that's what we're talking about here, used to be a standard course. I've got some old textbooks in it. But around the 60s, 50s, 60s, when the Warren Court was completely throwing out everything, that just became not cool anymore. And the 14th Amendment, I mentioned, I'll put up a site for this. My old teacher at Alabama, Forrest McDonald, very noted historian, he did a good article years and years ago, he's deceased, about showing how it didn't matter that it was accepted, but the 14th Amendment was never legally ratified for a number of reasons. Several states withdrew their ratification. The southern states, we don't know whether they're in the Union or not. They made us ratify it before they let us back in the Union, but according to Lincoln, you couldn't secede, so how were we ever out of the Union? But all that aside, they used the 14th Amendment to, strike down laws against child pornography, against executing child rapists. That's the Supreme Court does all of that now, and it's a top down, and it's what they never wanted to have that. And John Marshall said so, and obviously committed a fraud. Folks, we'll be back next week with Armed Alabama. Check us out on YouTube, where we put up a lot of interesting stuff, or on the Facebook page, or on our website, www.armedalabama.com. And you can, of course, listen to other great shows here on FM Talk 106.5. And I hope, within reason, your candidate wins. You know, Bill Buckley was asked about everybody needs to vote, and he says, on the contrary, madam, I think far too many people vote.
And if you're a Republican and you want a real laugh, Google the song "I Think My Dog's a Democrat" by Brian Lewis. It is so funny and so true.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see you next week on Armed Alabama.